a long time ago. I reckon it must be 20 years or more. And met Jim Gavin at one of these things, and he was talking about it. And Susie and I decided, well, it'd be good fun to go and take part. So I think probably only a short while after he told us.
Right. And what made you decide in the first place to have a go at this sort of unheard of sport?
Well, it seemed like a good idea, you know. I mean, it seemed fun, and there were a lot of people that I sort of knew who were interested in the idea. And a chap called Tony Hazelwood had these ride-on lawnmowers, and I thought, well, riding on the thing, that's going to be great rather than pushing the blasted thing. And so it seemed, you know, in fact, it was a very nice social.
I mean, at that time, though, wasn't it sort of lawnmower racing a bit of a come down for someone who's considered the greatest British champion of all time?
No, it's not no come down at all, because I mean it was something quite different. It was something that one could enjoy, and I mean really rather like a go-kart, I suppose, with you know, with the disconnecting the blades. But it was the idea was fun. I mean the field that he found for us to drive in was terrible. I mean appalling surface, I can tell you. But no, I think one has to consider lawnmower racing is completely different to any other racing, and the attitude, the way it was, and it was a very amateur thing, like motor racing was in the start, and therefore the idea of that really appealed to me.
What sort of skills do you need to be a good lawnmower racer?
I think you need to be able to take a buffeting, because it is really bad surface. I think you need concentration to keep your mind right on it. I think you need a fair amount of stamina, because you obviously don't want to stop more often than is necessary. I think that you need to, if you have a feel of the vehicle, because obviously they handle differently, one lawnmower to another and a lawnmower to a car, but the principle is very similar, and the way you drive the thing, you understeer or oversteer, you learn the characteristics of the vehicle, and then try to drive in the best way you could with the vehicle you've got.
Were there gears or anything like that?
Do you know, I can't remember. I would think there might have been. We had a wing on the back. I remember that, because that was done for laughs. Actually, we had this wing stuck on the back. I mean, I'm sure it was no good, but you know, that was done and it was quite good to see the thing. You could put a number on it and so on. But they were quite quick, you know. Yeah, there must have been gears. They were really quite quick.
It sounds like something out of Wacky Races. I mean, could you describe the lawnmower for us?
Well, the lawnmower I had was a Westwood, I think it was called, and of course you disconnected the blade, and really it was tweaked up. Obviously it was quite a lot faster than the normal one, and you'd get on this thing, and of course you'd drive it as hard as you could and come into the corners and throw it in sideways and sort of scuff off the speed and pick the most realistically smooth or smooth looking area you could. Obviously as the race went on, it did get a bit more smoother because there's been so many vehicles over it. You also had to watch out in those days, I remember, for the poor chaps who were going behind them, running behind a lawnmower, if you can imagine, and so obviously one didn't want to run over their feet or anything. But it was just a social fun, you know. I mean, that was it.
What about practicing? I mean, did you ever practice in your back garden?
Never. No, I didn't have a back garden because I live in the middle of London. The only practice, of course, was when we went down there. I'm sure I've obviously ridden lawnmowers before, and I seem to remember we were given a certain amount of time to be able to see how they handled and that sort of thing. But it isn't like motor racing where you go and set them up at a racetrack and get the whole thing sorted out. Not quite like that.
And what did your friends and colleagues make of it all when you said you're going to be doing something?
Oh, I think they thought it was quite amusing. I mean, there were quite a lot of drivers. I mean, Derek Bell was down there playing around with them and so on, and I'm sure there were others as well. And they just thought, well, it's quite a gas to go and have a go.
And tell me about that first event. I mean, what are your sort of memories from the first time?
Oh, it's a long time ago. I remember that you start off and it gets dark and then it gets cold, quite cold at night, and of course you're beginning to get tired, and then you come in and anything goes wrong, you've got to sort of fix it yourselves. When I say, I don't mean myself, but the team had to. But I don't think we had much trouble. As far as I remember, it went really quite well, and it's surprising how quickly you can go around corners with a lawnmower. I mean, one doesn't look at the thing and think, oh my God, that looks like a racing car, but they did handle a lot better than one would have thought. particularly the Westwood, I must say. I think that Tony Hazelwood knew quite a lot about cars, because he'd raced and he had a car himself, but also about handling, and so the vehicle we had, the lawnmower we had, was really quite a nice and relatively sophisticated vehicle for that period.
What was the top speed? What sort of speed did you get?
I don't know what our top speed was, because it's easy to exaggerate, but I would think it felt like 100 miles an hour. It was probably all of about 39, but it felt pretty fast, I can tell you that. They were not the most sophisticated, although we had the best seats you could get and all that sort of thing. It still wasn't that comfortable, but it felt fast.
Was there much rivalry between you and other racers?
Oh yes, tremendous rivalry, because I mean, after all, we're there to try and win, and oh, absolutely, you better believe it. I mean, you're not going to give a quarter. Certainly we didn't, and I think even the girls had quite a lot of rivalry, and they, I think they pressed on quite a bit too. I mean, the most important thing, of course, was to beat the ladies' team. I mean, that would have been disaster if we hadn't beaten them. But then we hoped they'd win, but we'd be further ahead, you see, which is what happened.
So no way it was a joke, it's a proper serious race.
Oh yeah, oh, I mean, it was, one doesn't go and take off one night and drive through the night, you know, and sort of, just for, well, you do it for fun, but fun is because you're still trying to compete. It wouldn't be fun just driving around not competing. No, that would be no fun at all. I mean, one tries one's hardest and you try to keep the thing going, and the pit stops were all as fast as they could be, and you come in and no, it was relatively competitive, but a lot of fun.
Right. Tell me about the pit stops. I mean, obviously more fuel goes in the engine, but what else happens? Well,
the pit stops are only for fuel. I mean, you're obviously not going to change tyres and that sort of thing, not unless you've got a flat, I suppose, then you would. But no, you come in and you refuel as quickly as possible. Of course, I can't remember whether the tanks were limited or whether we were allowed to use what was on them or whether we used bigger ones, but we obviously wanted to get as long a gap between pit stops as we could, because even stopping and starting, even if you did nothing else and changed your drivers, takes a certain amount of time and would require, you know, give another team quite an advantage. So therefore we did make them as long as possible between gaps.
This film will be shown on foreign television. I mean, do you think there's ever going to be a sort of international perspective? Do you think there'll be foreign teams?
I think only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun, and I think it's inclined to be only mad dogs and Englishmen would race lawnmowers, although I do believe it's taken on in America. But America's so big anyway that to get from one place to another would be very, very difficult. And the trouble is, if it did take off properly, then I think it could lose the fun. It could become too serious. And I think that lawnmower racing wants to be fun, like we used to go to the local pub and have a drink, although I didn't drink. But you go there and there's all sorts of people burbling around. I think if it got really serious and you had transporters and that sort of thing, I think it would remove what we actually achieved.
So the fun aspect.
If for instance they got the same sort of thing in Germany or France, then I'm sure that a lot of people would like to go and take part. And in fact, I would, but I wouldn't like to see the thing really become serious. It would spoil it.
What do you think of, you know, what do you think the foreigners will make of this weekend? You know?
I would think they'd think, well, crikey, that's crazy, but it must be fun to have a go. I think it's one of those things you look at and you realise that it's a pretty stupid thing to do, but everybody is enjoying it, and therefore let's try.
When are you actually competing? I mean, what are the differences between lawnmower racing and Formula One?
Oh, I mean, the only similarity is you're going to try and win. I mean, the handling and the characteristic and I mean, the whole thing was completely different. So there's no similarity other than the fact that that one makes it as competitive as one can. And certainly I was trying as hard as I would cut corners and you know, do it as quickly as possible. If one corner got bad because of a particular reason, then obviously one would take avoiding action and go around. But the whole thing from the start really was to try to get around as quickly as you could, and that is where the similarity begins and ends, really.
But all the drive and the adrenaline, you know, you used in Formula One was there.
Oh yes. I mean, you get a lot of kicks out of it. Yes.
What about advice for novice racers, you know, racing for the first time this weekend?
I think that if anybody's going to go into it, the first thing they've got to do is to look upon it as enjoyment, not take it too seriously, because I think that would spoil it. Obviously take it seriously enough that you're doing your best and and preparing the vehicle as well as you can, those sort of things. But I think it's very much a family sport. In other words, you can take your wife along, and I mean, she doesn't have to take part. Mine did, but you don't have to. It's nice to feel the people in the pits are paying attention, so little few signals and telling you how long to go and all those sort of things. I mean, the thing to do is to try to make it as important to you as you can, so you're able to get quite a lot of pleasure from it. But I mean, as far as learning the vehicle is concerned, obviously the only thing to do is to get onto a piece of grass somewhere and then drive it as fast as you can, and see how you enjoy it.
Sorry, mate. Stop following you. Let's put the car in mid-flow. I mean, are there any places in London where you could practice? I mean,
I don't think they'd like you to practice in Hyde Park. Hyde Park's my closest bit of grass, but I don't think for a moment that the powers to be would look upon it with much pleasure. Excuse me.
Okay. What, in your opinion, makes a good lawnmower racer?
I suppose a friendly person. I think it's important that it should be a social, and even if it's social, there's no reason why one can't be competitive. But I think it's important that the person should be there to enjoy it. That's all that.
And after all these years, do you still find it amusing to watch?
I haven't seen one for a long time, and unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity. Won't have the opportunity to go this year because I'm tied up with something else. But if I did get the opportunity, and it was organised, it's something that I would enjoy taking part in. Yes.
One of the teams on Saturdays at the weekend is an all-girls team. Do you have any sort of particular advice for them?
Well, I'm glad there is an all-girls team. I think it's very important that the girls could take part, and they have an advantage. They're lighter, which should help them from the point of view of actually being competitive. I just hope they've got a good competitive vehicle, and wish them luck. Have fun.
If there was a local race in Hyde Park, if it was allowed, would you take part?
Oh, so if I had the time, I would. Yes, certainly. If there was one in Hyde Park, one could get sponsorship, probably.
If you could pinpoint it, what does make it so much fun? If you can put your finger on it.
I suppose purely that it's a stupid thing to do. I mean, anything that's as ridiculous as this has to start out with a chance of success, because people coming to it and taking part in it are people who are looking for unusual ways of enjoying their weekend, I suppose.
Would you be tempted back?
Yes, oh yes, I could. Oh, if I had the time and everything, yes, I could be. Certainly.
Are there many opportunities for cheating?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I would like to hope that people who take part in this wouldn't cheat. I mean, you have regulations. If the regulations are put out and they're realistic, I don't think there's any need to cheat. I don't think there's anything to be gained by cheating, and I would be appalled really if somebody did. I think it would be a great shame, because it spoils what the whole thing's about.
And with the Tour de France in the news recently and the swimming, is it a drug-free sport?
I think it's drug-free. No, it isn't drug-free actually, because I'm sure they bring a lot of drinking drugs along. I don't know that anybody comes along on anything stronger than that, mainlining anything. But no, I mean, the worst thing could happen is if it got like Formula One is now, where there's it's too serious and too much cheating goes on. Yeah, that would be bad.
Does lawnmower racing sort of sum up the sport more about fun than money?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it isn't, mind you, it isn't cheap. I mean, you can't do a race and take a vehicle along and do all that for nothing. But in principle, it is not an expensive sport, unless one goes and pours an awful lot of money into preparing the vehicle. But then, if anybody does that, it's usually somebody who's building the thing, and therefore to put more money into it is just using his labour and so on. So it shouldn't be too expensive.
And finally, do you have any message for the racers this weekend?
Yeah, all I can say to them really is that I'm sorry I'm not there, and enjoy it the same as I'm sure that I would if I was there. I hope the weather's decent, because it's awfully boring if it's wet and cold. although it's slippery on the track, it's quite amusing. But no, I wish them every success and have fun.